Hello guys, and now we are on the model game for the Scheveningen variation in the Sicilian, and now we are seeing the Fischer Sozin attack, and this game is a model game for the white side, and the game is played between Kornev as white and Sergei as black in Moscow 95. So the game goes e4 c5, knight f3 d6, d4 knight f6, and knight c3, cd4, knight takes d4 and e6, and now bishop c4, knight c6, bishop e3 and bishop e7 and queen e2 and short castle and long castles and a6. Now bishop to b3. Here knight takes c6, b takes c6, and after e5 and knight d5 is just bad for white. I mean, this is not good for white, this is bad for white. So that's why white went bishop b3, and then now knight to d7, now g4. Many strong players begin with king to b1 as a form of prophylaxis against black's next move. Then of course they proceed with the kingside pawn storm. Now knight c5, rook h g1. Here after knight takes c6, black will have to trade off his hard-working knight 2. Now bishop takes b3 check, a takes b3, and then b takes c6. But this is nothing particularly terrible from his point of view. So I mean here black took on b3 check. Now maybe this trade is a little too fast, and here instead of this queen to e8 or queen c7 or even bishop d7 are also played. So after knight takes b3, a takes b3, knight b4. This was black's idea. He wants to set up the strike of d5. Another plan, if he can find the time to get rook to the c file, is to set up some mating motive based on queen a5 and an eventual rook takes c3 exchange sack. But right now it is all a little bit vague. So bishop d7 is also a good move here. Now rook g3 by white. This rook move brings several new attacking ideas into the picture for white, and we shall shortly see how these working. King b1 might be an improvement to his position. Now queen a5. Now king b1 is forced, and bishop d7. It seems like black is the one with an initiative here, because he is just about to bring a rook to the c file and set up various mating motives, but white has a way to throw a spanner into the works. Now knight to f5, a typical knight sacrifice which perhaps was not expected in this precise position, but which nevertheless forces black onto the back foot. Of course it must be taken. Now ef5, gf5. We begin to understand a bit why the move rook g3 was included. Now that the g file is open, the speed with which white can double rooks on that line begins to be somewhat important. And furthermore, with the white pawn on f5, it is also impossible that the rook could swing to the h file. I mean, it is also possible that the rook could swing to the h file, a fact whose significance will shortly be appreciated. Now bishop f6. This is the only decent move here. If at all black instead defends with rook fc8 to make a bishop f8 possible and also begin queenside operation, he will not succeed in holding the king side. For example, if bishop d4, then g6, and after g6 there is queen to h5. So here, if instead of g6 bishop f8 fails to rook takes g7, bishop takes g7, and queen g4, and black is mated. Here king f8, and then queen takes, king e7, and bishop f6, and king e8, queen g8 mate is coming. So bishop f8 is a blunder. So black plays the only move g6, queen h5. White mobilizes new attacking pieces. I should mention that this move comes with the tempo. White threatens queen takes h7 check and rook h3 mate. Bishop f8 here. White needs a new idea, which comes in the form of rook g5, which breaks the pin along the 5th rank, and in fact threatens f takes g6, attacking the black queen. So here, if at all rook takes c3, then after bishop takes c3, then bishop f8, and rook g5, queen a2 check, king c1, bishop e8, now fg6, and queen to h3, now bishop g7, and bishop takes, king takes, and queen c3 check, and after king to g8, or even king f8. I think black can't hold the position anymore. So the only decent move here was bishop f6 on the 17th move, and now bishop d4. So this important defender should be traded off. After bishop takes d4, rook takes d4. Now rook ac8. Black still plays for the idea of an exchange sack on c3, but that is too optimistic. another tactical weakness comes to the fore. If black tries to seal the g file shut with g6 here, g6, then fg6, fg6, and then queen c4 is coming. White retrieves his piece, and this leaves the position approximately equal. Here after this, so this is coming. If at all h takes g6, there is queen c4, threatening rook takes g6 check, king g7, and queen takes b4, queen takes b4, and rook takes b4. Since here the f file is closed, black lacks the counterplay that he would get after the other capture on g6. So after rook a c8, and now rook takes b4. White gives up yet another exchange, while rook takes c3 ceases to be an issue. White is of course behind a whole load of material as well. Here rook takes d6 is objectively stronger, but the consequences of this move are harder to calculate. Now if bishop c6 fails to queen g4, also if rook takes c3, and after b takes c3, queen a2 check, king c1, and then bishop to b5, queen to d1, queen a3 check, then king d2, and knight to c6, king e1. White has managed to defend off the enemy attack and can now turn his attention to his own attack. If at all rook fd8, then white answers with queen g4, g6, and now rook takes d7, and f takes g6. Now too many black pieces are in emprise. After bishop takes f5, he takes f5. Now queen takes f5. How about rook b6? rook b6 is better here. But actually in the game white played rook takes b4, and then after queen takes b4, now knight d5 and queen d4. Under such continuous pressure, it is not surprising that mistakes are made. Here after queen b5, white has queen d2 with the threat of rook takes g7 and followed by queen g5 check and mate. If f6, then the tactical issues like c4 and if at all queen to c5, then queen h6 is coming, and then after rook f7 there is knight takes f6, and after king f8 there is rook takes g7, rook takes g7. Now knight takes d7 is coming. So here rook takes c4 is forced. After this is coming. So d5, queen d4, but white played queen d4 and then c3 and then bishop b5. Here if at all queen to c5, and there is knight f6 check, king h8 and queen h5, gf6 and queen h6 is coming, and after h6 there is queen to g5, after queen e5 there is f4. So the queen will have to give up, will have to sacrifice. So now after c3, bishop b5, queen c2, queen c5. Now the queen is distracted from the defense. Now we have f6 and then rook fe8. And here if at all g6, then queen d2 is coming. Queen d2, king h8, queen h6, then rook g8, queen takes, king takes, check, and then there's it's mate. I'm sorry, that's a mate. So if at all g5, then queen d2, bishop d3, check. Queen c5, f6, rook fe8, now f3. Here in the game f3 was played, but here it was better to take on g7, and then you could have gone like this. No. So actually black lost the game here. I hope you would have enjoyed the game, guys, and I'll be meeting you in the next game. Next game is also for white side, and the next after that there will be 2 games for black side. So thank you all.